I have a fake dead brother. To the outside world, he's the ultimate doting sibling. When we were kids, other girls had pretty little dresses. He gritted his teeth and bought me one. When we grew up, other girls had handsome boyfriends. He got his most attractive friend drunk and shoved him at me, declaring proudly, "If other people have it, my sister must have it too." I stared at the drunken villain he'd gifted me, trembling. This really isn't necessary. My brother has been a show-off since forever. I was 4, he was 7. Our parents were always busy with work and couldn't look after both of us. They planned to send me to stay with some relatives for a while. But just as we were about to leave, we bumped into Tony, who had just gotten home from school. A bunch of his classmates were with him. When they saw me 2 pigtails, big round eyes, they all started chattering. "Wow, Tony, you have a little sister? She's so cute. Can she play with us?" Yeah. With his peers fawning over him, Tony's eyes lit up like stars. He raised his chin, full of pride. Of course, my sister is super clingy. I stared at that little liar who could lie without blinking, silent. Is being a show-off some kind of cannon fodder instinct? Yes, I transmigrated into a novel, but not as the heroine or even the wicked side character, just a plain background nobody. The only one in our family who had any screen time was my pretentious brother. He couldn't stand the villain in school, poor background, full of arrogance, so he targeted him, got humiliated, targeted him again, got beaten down to the point of lashing out, eventually expelled, drifted through life, amounted to nothing, and died miserably. A textbook cannon fodder. I read the whole book and could only think, he brought it on himself, zero sympathy. But Mom didn't know what a mess he'd become. Still, she didn't want to embarrass him in front of his friends. She pulled him aside and whispered, "Tony, we're going to send your sister to stay with relatives for a while, so you won't be able to play with her for now. No playing?" That was basically slapping my brother in public. His face turned beet red, eyes wide. The next moment, he grabbed Mom's hand, pride gone, and pleaded, "Mom, I'm already grown up. I can take care of her. Please don't send her away." By the end, his voice was cracking. Mom gave Dad a worried glance, still uncertain. "You're sure you can take care of your sister?" Under the admiring gaze of his friends, Tony thumped his chest. "Of course. As long as I'm alive, I won't let her suffer even a little." Me. I don't believe a word of it, but our parents did. And just like that, I stayed home. They left early and came home late. My brother had school. I figured he was just talking big. After all, school wasn't that far away, but not that close either. It was June, blazing hot at noon. I was just about to fend for myself when the door burst open. Heavy panting echoed down the hallway. I turned around and saw a flushed little boy kicking off his shoes, tugging at his collar to cool down. He must have run all the way back. Gasping for breath, he looked straight at me and said in his still childish voice, "Hang on, sis. I'll heat up your food right after I rest." My gaze faltered. He really came back? Maybe he was scared I'd starve. He didn't rest long before heading to the kitchen. He was just a first grader, barely tall enough to reach the counter. He dragged over a stool, climbed up, and struggled to put the food Mom had cooked that morning into the microwave. 3 minutes later, ding! Without thinking, he reached in barehanded. My eyes widened. I rushed forward. Wait! Before I could finish, crash! The plate shattered on the floor. Tony clutched his fingers and howled in pain, but before he could recover, he spotted the mess and blood on the floor and froze. I followed his gaze and looked down. A shard of ceramic was stuck in my shin, blood gushing out. Before I could say anything, Tony panicked. Burnt hand forgotten, he crouched beside me, his voice trembling. "Sis, you're bleeding. Don't be scared. I'm here." "I'm not scared," I muttered, exasperated. But the next second, the boy looked up, eyes reddening, tears welling up like they could fall any moment. Still, he tried to act tough. And just like that, something thudded in my chest. I chuckled. He was obviously scared to death, but still pretending to be calm. Maybe he wasn't so annoying after all? Tony didn't know how to dress a wound. He squatted beside me, little hands hovering over my leg, trying to stop the bleeding but too afraid to touch. Blood was trickling down my pale leg, pooling on the floor. He got more and more frantic, mumbling over and over, "It's okay, it's okay, it's okay." After hesitating forever, he couldn't hold it in anymore. He jumped up. "Sis, I'll be right back." Then he bolted out the door like a mini tornado. Where was he going? Before I could react, I heard his loud voice echoing outside. "Help! My sister's dying! Is anyone there? Please help her! Somebody quick!" Listening carefully, you could hear the sobs in his voice, maybe even a few tears flying out with every shout. My heart twitched, but then I caught the words he was yelling and nearly fainted on the spot. Dying? I just got a little cut. Not like I'm on my last breath. But, with how loud Tony was, the neighbors probably thought a murder had happened. It was right around dinner time. Aunt Kristen from next door dropped her spatula and ran over, grabbing Tony like he was on fire. "Tony, what's going on?" Seeing someone come, my brother quickly wiped his eyes, pulled Aunt Kristen into the house, pointed at my frozen self and blurted out, "Auntie, my sister's bleeding a lot." By the time help arrived, the blood had already started to clot. It looked scary, but really wasn't that bad. Aunt Kristen fetched a first aid kit, cleaned and bandaged me up, then swept up the shattered plate. Before leaving, she reminded us not to get the wound wet. Tony nodded like a bobblehead. After she left, he came back from his room with snacks. "Here, sis, eat up." His voice still had a bit of a nasal twang. I looked at his red eyes carefully. Had I really scared him that much? Thinking this, I blurted out, "I'm fine now, don't cry." Hearing that, Tony froze, sneaking a glance at my leg. Then his face turned crimson and he stammered, I wasn't crying, it was windy outside." I raised an eyebrow, taking in his stubborn little face. Sure, windy. "Whatever you say, big bro." That night, our parents found out about the incident. They patiently explained to Tony that after heating something in the microwave, he couldn't just reach in with his bare hands, he had to use oven mitts. Tony listened intently and promised with utmost confidence, "So easy, I'll do it perfectly tomorrow." Unfortunately, he didn't get the chance. I was going back to kindergarten. Originally, since I was supposed to stay with relatives, my parents had already informed the principal about transferring me, and most of the paperwork was done. Now that I wasn't transferring, they had to go back after work to fix it. I'd be returning to kindergarten the next day. When my brother heard the news, he was visibly disappointed, stomping his feet in frustration when no one was watching, but there was nothing he could do. I thought he'd finally given up the chance to perform, but to my surprise, the next morning when I got up, I saw his little figure in the kitchen, wearing oven mitts, carefully taking warm milk out of the microwave. He was just a first grader, but he stood there trying to act all composed like a miniature adult. When he saw me, he waved me over cheerfully. "Sis, come drink your milk." When our parents came out and saw the scene, they were amused and praised him. Such a good big brother. Tony's mouth curled into a grin, but he quickly suppressed it and replied calmly, "I'm her big brother. Of course I should take care of her." Seeing this, our parents exchanged a glance and burst out laughing. Tony blushed under their laughter but couldn't help chuckling along. Outside the window, the soft morning light fell across the three of them. In front of them was a striped dining table with cups of milk and steaming noodles. On the fabric sofa nearby, rabbit and teddy bear plushies lay scattered in cozy disarray. Time seemed to freeze in that moment, like a picture of a warm and loving family. I looked quietly at my family. I thought about how, in the story's original plot, our parents were devastated by what happened to my brother. Their hair turned gray prematurely, and they looked utterly worn down. Suddenly, a thought surged in my heart. I didn't want that ending. I wanted all of us to be okay. After that day, my brother and I became much closer. Wanting to prove to our parents that he meant what he said, he grabbed the stuffed toys I was picking up and declared, "Let me do it! You go rest!" Then he worked up a sweat, panting from exhaustion. When I wanted a snack, he pulled out his piggy bank and said, "I've got money. You go buy some." Then turned his back on me, trying to look cool. But I could see him biting his lip in pain. Those snacks might not be worth it after all. Later, when I got out of kindergarten one day and saw the little figure waiting just outside the gate, I froze. Tony, carrying a heavy backpack, stood with a group of friends, waving excitedly. "Sis," who knows what he had told them. When I didn't move, he walked straight toward me. "Sis, I'm here to take you home." Someone nearby chimed in after hearing him, "Tony, your sister's so tiny and cute." Yeah, seriously adorable. My brother's pride swelled like a balloon. He batted his eyes and stared at me expectantly. I caught on and sweetly called out, "Big brother." The moment he heard that, his smile stretched from ear to ear, looking smug as ever. "Hey, sis, I'm right here." I'd seen people show off wealth or looks, but never someone showing off their little sister. I couldn't help laughing and sighed. Still, I reached out and took his hand. "Let's go home." He giggled and softened his voice by 8 degrees. Okay, and from then on, it became a habit. All the way through elementary school, my brother would walk home with me after class. Of course, he got out of school later than I did. Most of the time, I waited for him. Gradually, I got used to it. Until one day, after school, I waited in the classroom for a full hour. I even finished all my prep work for the next day. I looked outside the window, still no sign of him. It was getting close to winter, and the days were getting shorter. Dusk was already settling in. My heart skipped a beat, a vague unease creeping in. Tony was now in 8th grade. His junior high building was some distance from the elementary section. I didn't think much of it at first. I packed up and ran over to his classroom. There were only a few students left inside, but a quick glance showed no sign of Tony. A few classmates recognized me and looked surprised to see me show up alone. One of them scratched his head and said in confusion, "Tony left right after class. The teacher didn't keep us late today, we even got out earlier than usual." I froze. Earlier than usual? Still, I didn't say anything and turned to leave. Maybe something came up last minute and he had to head home first? He should already be there, right? But to my surprise, Tony came home after I did. Mom was already making dinner. When she saw how late he was, she naturally asked, "Where were you? Why didn't you come back with your sister today?" I glanced sideways. His black hair was stuck to his forehead, and despite it being late autumn, he was drenched in sweat. His cheeks were flushed like he had run all the way. When he saw me safe and sound on the sofa, he let out a breath of relief and replied, "I had something to do. I thought I'd come back a little later with my sister." Mom didn't press further. I looked at him again. Was it just me, or were his lips split? Did he get into a fight? The thought came and went. I didn't dwell on it. The next day at school, after second period during the long break, my deskmate came back from the restroom and gave me a strange look. "Jennifer, isn't your brother named Tony?" I nodded. "Yeah. Tony picked me up all the time. Not just his class, everyone in mine knew him by now. At first, some kids teased us. Once they found out we were siblings, the gossip stopped." Seeing me nod, my deskmate hesitated, then looked around cautiously and lowered her voice. "I heard your brother roped in some upperclassmen to bully one of his classmates. The boy's parents came to the school demanding answers. It's turning into a big deal. I think your mom and dad are here too." I jumped to my feet. "What?" A few heads turned toward me. I tried to keep calm and asked, "Where are they now?" "The principal's office." I didn't think twice. I rushed out of the classroom and headed straight there. The junior high and elementary teachers shared the same admin building. It wasn't far from the classrooms, just past the flower beds. As I approached the office, I didn't even get close before I heard an angry man yelling, "What kind of parenting is this? How can a kid so young already be doing something like this?" My mom's voice followed immediately. "Tony, what's going on?" "I didn't do it." The office door was slightly ajar. Through the gap, I saw Tony with his head lowered, black hair covering his eyes, but his tone was firm and unwavering. That reply clearly infuriated the man. He slammed a video clip onto the office computer and hit play. From my angle, I saw Tony standing with a group of upperclassmen with dyed yellow hair. In the corner, a skinny boy from his class cowered, clearly terrified. After watching the video, our parents' faces darkened. My brother had always been a show-off, constantly trying to act tough. Naturally, Mom assumed he was just trying to be cool again and ended up doing something like this. She looked disappointed. "Tony, apologize to your classmate." "Mom!" My brother's eyes widened, and then he snapped, "I told you it wasn't me." The other boy was present too. I glanced at the skinny, fragile-looking kid, if I remembered correctly. He used to be on decent terms with my brother. His name was Jason. Seeing Tony deny it, Jason's mom exploded in anger. "My son never did anything to your Tony. Was it really necessary to bully him like this? At such a young age, how can he be this cruel?" My mom's lips parted slightly, as if she wanted to defend him, but with such solid evidence, she couldn't say anything. She could only repeat, Tony, apologize to your classmate. And don't hang around with those boys anymore. My brother ignored her, staring straight at the silent Jason. Jason, why would you do this? The frail boy lifted his head with trembling hesitation, his eyes shifting. I don't know what you're talking about. You didn't like me, but I'm not just gonna roll over. Bullshit. My brother lost it. He swung a punch right in front of everyone. The boy didn't even try to dodge. But the punch never landed. My brother froze, staring down at me as I held his arm. His furious expression turned blank. Sis? I held onto his hand. Don't do it, big brother. Mom stood aside, startled by his sudden move. But deep down, this only confirmed her suspicions, and she couldn't help but scold him. Tony, bullying a classmate is already wrong. And now, you want to hit someone? Is this how we raised you? My brother's eyes turned red with tears. Even Dad frowned, making the final call. Tony, apologize to your classmate. As they spoke, our parents turned to the teacher and Jason's parents to apologize. We're so sorry. We didn't discipline him well enough. He's still a kid and doesn't fully understand right from wrong. Please, just give him another chance. But I cut them off before they could finish. I believe my brother didn't do this. My voice was loud and clear. Everyone in the room froze. Parents, teachers, even the people who were already halfway out the door stopped in their tracks. In the original plot, Tony was just cannon fodder. His background was barely mentioned, and his only role was to go after the villain in his lowest moments. His malice had always seemed abrupt, but now I thought there had been signs all along. Maybe some people aren't bad at heart, but once their parents decide they are, they give up. You already think I'm a bad kid, so fine, I'll be one. But what if, when something happened, we always stood behind him? Wouldn't things turn out differently? With that thought, I calmly looked at the teachers. There's more than one surveillance video. Why not look at the full footage instead of just a few minutes? What if this clip isn't the whole truth? Maybe they hadn't expected me to speak up. My parents looked startled, but Mom recovered first. She hesitated, glanced at Tony, and finally said, Right, we should check the whole recording. The full video, if it existed, Jason would never hand it over. The room fell into an awkward silence. Jason's father, convinced his son was the victim, stormed out saying he'd go get the surveillance himself and told us to wait. As he left, Jason visibly paled and shot me a vicious glare, only for my brother to step in and block it. My brother rolled his eyes and barked, Stare at my sister again and I'll really knock your teeth in. I couldn't help laughing. In the end, nothing more came of it. Jason's family must have watched the full footage and never returned to the school. The official conclusion? Just a misunderstanding. But not long after, Jason transferred out. I didn't think much of it. Later, I asked my brother what really happened. He told me that he got out of school early and noticed Jason acting strangely. Worried something was wrong, he followed him only to see Jason getting cornered by a group. He jumped in to help, but the next day, Jason accused Tony of being behind it. Probably because his parents saw his injuries and he was too afraid to tell the truth, so he dragged Tony down with him. Anyway, forget that. Look, sis, do you like it? My brother's cheerful voice snapped me out of my thoughts. I turned and saw him pull a dress out from behind his back like a magician. A delicate pink and white dress, beautiful and clearly expensive. I stared in shock. Brother, this is... Tony grinned proudly. Hee hee! I ran into some girls from your class when I was out getting ice cream. They were all wearing cute dresses and said you always look like a tomboy. As if. No way you're gonna be the odd one out. You get the best one. He added. Besides, you're graduating elementary school soon. Wear it then. I looked at the animated boy in front of me, warmth rising in my chest. No wonder he hadn't been buying snacks lately. Always clutching his piggy bank like he couldn't bear to open it. He'd been saving up for this. Ah! I lunged forward and hugged him. He was startled but quickly caught me, his hands hovering awkwardly in midair. His handsome face turned a bit red. After a while, he rested his hands on my back and gave a small cough. Told you if I'm around, you'll never get hurt. I nodded, heartfelt. Thanks, big brother, he replied smugly, as expected. Then, after a long pause, I heard him whisper, I should be thanking you too. He spoke so softly that when I looked up, he'd already turned away like nothing happened. A smile crept into my eyes. What can you do with a brother this proud? Guess I'll just have to spoil him myself. Summer break passed in a flash. I started junior high. My brother aced his high school entrance exam and got into a top school. But I wasn't happy. Alarm bells rang in my mind. In the story, high school was the turning point of Tony's life. It was when he met the villain, Luke, and began relentlessly targeting him until he eventually got expelled for violence and went downhill from there. And the worst part, his school had dorms. I wouldn't be around to watch him, so I could only text him every now and then, fishing for clues. Hey bro, do you have any hot classmates? Luke Dawson was probably good looking. My brother replied right away. Yeah, there is. So he really met him. My heart skipped a beat. I played it cool. How's your relationship with him? One of my classmates says her brother's got a bunch of good-looking friends too. I asked casually, but the typing indicator on my screen disappeared. Then it came back, disappeared again, reappeared. It flickered like that for about 5 minutes. Finally, a message came through from Tony. I'm super tight with him. After that, it was like he'd broken some kind of dam. Message after message rolled in. We eat together all the time. Hang on, I'll send you a pic. Don't worry, I've got tons of handsome friends too. I'll introduce them next time. I stared at the blurry photo he sent. It looked like a candid shot. Oh no, now I was even more worried. That worry stayed with me until winter break. My brother's the type to only share the good and hide the bad. After I asked him that day, he didn't come home for several weekends in a row. I even suspected he'd gotten beat up and was too scared to come back. But when I called, his voice sounded totally normal. I didn't know whether to be relieved or more concerned. Then I heard commotion at the door. Here we are. This is my house. It was Tony's voice. A second later, someone knocked. Sis, he shouted from outside. I rushed to open the door. Brother, but before I could finish, I saw a strikingly handsome boy standing behind my brother. Since starting high school, Tony had shot up to over 1.8 meters, and this guy wasn't far behind, just looked a little leaner. I stared at him, and Tony noticed. His expression twitched before he grinned and said, His name's Luke, my friend. He's staying over for a while. What? Luke? Luke? My eyes flew wide open. No way, wasn't that the villain's name? Seeing the I just saw a ghost look on my face, Tony tilted his head, confused. He slung an arm around Luke's shoulder and bragged, This is my little sister, Jennifer. Cute, right? Luke gave me a polite glance. Seeing Tony's agree or die expression, he paused, then nodded. Yeah, she's cute. Damn right. Me! Oh my God, what the hell is going on? Brother, you're cannon fodder. How dare you bring the villain home? Are you trying to die? My mind was spinning with questions. But with Luke right there, I couldn't exactly grill my brother for answers. There was a spare room at home. My mom cleaned it out for Luke to stay in. During dinner, I finally got a chance to pull Tony into a corner. Hey, are you and Luke close? Of course, he's handsome, right? Tony sounded smug. I glanced at the guy on the sofa, sharp brows, clear eyes, a killer side profile. Handsome, I admitted. No kidding, he's practically the protagonist. Tony grinned when I confirmed it. Told ya, we're real close. This world had gone so off script I barely recognized it anymore. What I didn't know was that while I was in the kitchen helping Mom serve dishes, Tony quietly let out a breath and muttered to himself, Totally worth it. All that effort finally paid off. Luke stayed with us through the new year. During that time, he and Tony got along like regular friends. That eased my mind a bit. Soon, it was time to buy New Year supplies. Mom handed the task to Tony and me. Luke, being a guest, came along to help. With someone else present, Tony went into full-on Big Brother mode. Sis, you love this, right? Grab extra. Jelly, buy it. Milk drinks, get 'em. I was touched until it was time to pay. I didn't dare move. Tony stared at the number on the register, his face turned green. I facepalmed. We'd gone way over budget. But to maintain his doting brother image in front of Luke, he paid up anyway. As we walked out, he whined through gritted teeth, Ugh, my wallet's bankrupt. I almost burst out laughing but held it in when I caught his pitiful glare. When we finally lugged everything home, Mom and Dad were stunned. Luckily, with Luke around, Tony was spared a stir-fried bamboo shoot beatdown. New Year's Eve was hectic and lively. Tony went off to help Dad, leaving just me and Luke in the living room. He sat there with perfect posture, head slightly lowered, the lively atmosphere around him somehow highlighting his loneliness. I suddenly remembered the story. Luke's parents divorced when he was young. He lived with his mom until she remarried a rich man and had another kid. Luke became the unwanted one. His mom, desperate to preserve her new life, passed him back to his alcoholic dad like a hot potato. Having brought home no money, he was beaten regularly. Over time, he turned cold and guarded. When he wasn't smiling, his gaze carried a savage intensity, like a beast, always on alert. I thought for a moment, then picked up a tangerine and walked over. "Luke, want a tangerine?" I asked casually. Caught off guard, he looked up, eyes meeting mine. I was smiling. His gaze flickered. After a pause, he reached out and took the fruit from me. His voice was cool. "Thanks." His hands were beautiful, long fingers, pale and clean, each knuckle distinct. I stared for a moment, marveling inwardly. No wonder he's a main character. I'd never seen anyone this good-looking before or after transmigrating. Truly top tier. Not far off, my brother was putting up window decals. Suddenly, he spotted me sitting close to Luke and smushed his face against the glass, staring at us with smoke practically shooting from his eyes. I turned my head and nearly had a heart attack. What the heck? Who let the goblin in? In the days that followed, we went to the amusement park, learned to make dumplings together. Luke stayed quiet, but Tony and I talked enough for all three of us. Bit by bit, Luke got used to it and even started smiling more. His smile was like spring thaw melting snow. I didn't hold back my praise. "Luke, you have such a nice smile." He paused, ears tinged red. Tony, however, was not having it. "Sis, who's hotter, me or Luke?" I pondered, then flashed a peace sign and grinned. "Look at me, the clever little troublemaker." Luke's somber expression softened into something warmer. He patted Tony on the shoulder. "Weren't you gonna buy Jennifer candied hawthorn? Let's go." Tony snorted. "Fine." That's how it went until the end of winter break. They returned to school. I added Luke's contact, and sometimes we'd grab a meal on weekends. Tony's attitude got a bit weird, but since he wasn't targeting Luke, I let it go. What I didn't expect was that by my sophomore year in college, Tony and Luke had started a business together. When I heard the news, I was so excited I couldn't sleep all night. I mean Luke, the guy who stands shoulder to shoulder with the male lead. He's destined to make it big, become a young CEO of a public company. If my brother's teamed up with him, doesn't that mean he's about to get rich too? Just thinking about it had me over the moon, but then I suddenly sobered up. In the original plot, Luke falls in love with the heroine while competing with the male lead. Love unrequited, he spirals into darkness, makes one mistake after another, goes bankrupt, and ultimately drives into the sea to his death. He was supposed to meet the sunny female lead after achieving success and find redemption. Thank goodness that hasn't happened yet, but still, just in case, hey bro, has Luke met any girls lately? What if the heroine showed up early? The message had barely left my phone before my brother replied, "Nope, he's been working on projects with me every day. Don't worry, I got it covered." Little sad puppy JPJ. What do you mean you got it covered? I don't even get it. But since there wasn't a girl, I didn't push it further. Days passed, and then Valentine's Day came. I returned to the dorm to find my roommates all doing their thing, putting on makeup, choosing outfits, one of them chatting sweetly with her boyfriend. When I walked in, Ashley, the one I was closest with, glanced at me apologetically. "Jennifer, sorry, I can't have dinner with you tonight." I waved it off. "It's fine, go enjoy your date." In our dorm, I was the only one without a boyfriend. It didn't really bother me until I started picking out delivery and my brother called. I saw his name and answered instinctively. "Hey, bro." A moment later, his cheerful voice came through the line. "Sis, have you eaten yet?" "Not yet," I said. "Not eating with your roommates?" he asked. I paused, then said, "They all went out on dates." As soon as the words left my mouth, there was a moment of silence. I thought Tony would tell me to eat something healthy, but instead, he said, "I'll come get you. Let's go eat together. Eating alone is so boring." He said it casually, like it was no big deal, but I could hear the concern plain as day. My heart warmed and my voice softened without me realizing. Okay, but I regretted it very quickly. Especially when Tony shoved a drunk Luke into my arms, I nearly popped my eyeballs out. The guy in front of me had his head lowered, face flushed pale red from drinking, barely able to stand. One push from Tony and he collapsed right into me. His black hair brushed against my neck, making me shiver. If it had been any other handsome guy, I might have been giddy. But this was Luke! I was full on trembling. Carefully holding up his swaying body, I said, "Bro, maybe you should hold him." Before I could finish, Tony waggled his eyebrows at me. "Relax, I'm watching out for you." "He doesn't have a girlfriend," then proudly added, "Other people have hot boyfriends, so my sister needs one too." I looked down at the drunken villain in my arms. "This is not okay." But Tony wasn't listening. He sighed dramatically. "I've known for a while that you liked him. Why else would you treat him so well? You even got him gifts when buying mine. Every time you order milk tea, you get two. And you made me remember his birthday. Maybe I just wanted you two to stay friends forever, okay?" But I couldn't say it. Just as I was struggling to explain, a breeze swept by and the slightly drunk man began to sober up. His deep, dark eyes fell on me, laced with unexpected warmth. "Jennifer," he said. His voice was low and velvety. My ears flushed red, and I dumbly replied, "Huh?" Luke reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box, handed it to me, and smiled gently. "Happy Valentine's Day." With the alcohol softening his sharp features, he looked unusually tender. But today was Valentine's Day. A gift on Valentine's Day? Suddenly, the present in my hand felt scalding. Next to me, Tony nodded approvingly. At least he has some sense brought a gift. Was I dreaming? After that day, Luke started messaging me a lot more. He wasn't exactly chatty, but when I scrolled through our conversations, most of the messages were from him. "Have you eaten? Still in class? I ordered your favorite beef brisket rice. Also got you fruit salad. Don't forget to eat. Your brother and I are going to Paris for work. Plane's about to take off. My phone will be off, but you can still message me. I'll reply later." Once, when I got sick at school, he rushed over in the middle of the night and took me to the hospital, staying up until morning. I scrolled through our chats and sighed. I think in the end, it's sincerity that gets to me. As their company kept growing, my brother became more generous too. On my 20th birthday, he bought me a Maserati. Luke gave me a jade bracelet. Word was, that bracelet cost $4 million. When my brother found out, he immediately followed up with a $5 million necklace. Yeah, his need to show off? Still going strong. Later, my brother and I went to a wedding. When we saw the names and photos on the welcome board, I froze. Emily Carter and Carlos Mera. Wait, aren't those the leads? They actually got married? Tony looked totally calm. They were my high school classmates. We were all right. I stared at his composed face. Wow, this dude really pulled it off. Next to me, Luke placed a piece of beef in my bowl and said gently, "Eat it while it's hot." Snapping out of it, I looked at him. He was so natural, didn't even glance at the stage. My heart fluttered. Okay. Tony suddenly sprang into action, grabbing a huge crab. "Sis, wait! I'll peel this one for you." I turned my head and watched this clumsy guy pretending to be slick. I couldn't help myself. I picked up another crab and teased him with a grin. "I want two. Okay, bro. Tony, you got it." But before long, my bowl was already full. Luke had quietly piled it high. Tony was still hunched over, working hard on peeling crab, totally oblivious. By the time he was done, I was almost full. He looked crushed. Luke gave him a cool glance. "Food's not as good when it's cold." Tony instantly deflated, visibly sulking. I smiled, lifting the bowl full of crab meat. "Wow, you peeled this so well, big brother." Tony's eyes lit up again. At that moment, I realized I was standing right in the middle of happiness.